hit record.
All right. Thank you all for participating in that poll. I will drop the slides for one moment and just give a few of our guests a chance to introduce themselves briefly. I know that we have Christine from UCP on. Do you want to give a brief introduction?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Christine from UCP. I'm our Associate Executive Director, and I also oversee our employment and our day programs. And I'm the person at UCP who is working alongside Jennifer Keatley to implement our STEP of objectives in our plan. So, hi.
Thanks, Christine. And then I also saw that Gail from Favar joined, who's going to be helping us out today. Do you want to give a quick intro, Gail?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, my name is Gail Nebel. I'm the Employment Services Director at Favar. I did answer your poll wrong. We have submitted our application and it's been approved. We just haven't started working with our individuals yet. So.
Okay, well, that bumps our approved numbers up to one more. I know we have a couple of folks
I figured I'd tell you. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, we'll be hearing from Christine and Gail a little bit more later on, but also feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you want to share how far along you are with your plan or which agency you're with. More than welcome to do that. But in the next few minutes, I think we can get started with the first part of our conversation. I will pull our slides back up. All right, so we want to talk a little bit today about ways to invest STEP incentives. And like you've heard us mention, I'm sure many times before, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the ARPA funding that's available through these incentives, and providers have done quite a diverse array of things when it comes to investing their incentives. What we have on this slide at the top are two of the primary ways or goals of investing STEP incentives. The first of which is to enable the STEP transitions themselves and growing programs that are related to STEP. And the other way is by enhancing individual choice and independence in other agency efforts. So these funds are not restricted just to STEP efforts. They extend to the rest of your agency's strategic priorities and can be used for anything to support those efforts. And then in this box at the bottom, what you'll see is that we have three categories of investments that we have heard feedback from providers that have been really helpful. This is by no means exhaustive, though. And in each of those categories, we have a couple of examples of ways that providers have invested their incentives already. So you'll see on the left, we have enhanced staffing, which can include things like new trainings and certifications for staff, and also actually hiring and bringing on additional support. We have agency development, which is more about capacity building, things like purchasing new vans for transportation, investing in resources for individuals and families, or remodeling CLAs and other settings. And then lastly, we have program development. We've seen lots of examples of ways that incentives have been used in this area, but some popular ones have been to invest in supportive housing projects, in remote supports infrastructure and assistive technology solutions, among other things. So these are all examples, again, not exhaustive. I'm sure there are lots of creative things that you all have thought about as you've gone through the planning process, and we would love to hear about those today. And like I said, we will be hearing from both UCP and Favar a little bit of how they have used their incentives in detail a bit later on. So what I would like us to do now is I'm going to share a word cloud. I don't know if any of you have used these in the past, but it's sort of a brainstorming tool to kind of get a pulse of what a group is thinking. So I will share the information for that. To participate in the word cloud, you can either go to the link on this slide, or you can text STEP DDS1 to the number you see there, which is 22333. And I'll just walk through some more logistics as folks are getting set up there. So what we'll ask you to do is to submit a word or phrase that you're thinking about when it comes to the discussion question. How are you planning to use your STEP incentives? So you can submit a single word or you can submit a phrase, but if you submit a phrase and you would like the words to stay together in the word cloud, you just need to add a dash between them. So please feel free to share something from the previous slide that stood out to you, or if you're thinking of anything else that comes to mind. And you also feel free to enter more than one answer as you have ideas, or if something that someone else submits kind of sparks your creativity. If everybody is good with that information, I can start sharing the word cloud. Give me 1 second. This is a lot of windows to go between, so give me 1 moment.
And you can submit more than one response. So this isn't like pick your top piece. Feel free to send several through. And even if you are early in your planning process, if you're just thinking about it, you know, based on what we just talked through in terms of some of the options of ways you can use incentives, what stood out to you? What are some things that you think might be a good fit for your agency?
I have not pulled it up yet because I don't see any responses yet. So I'm gonna hold off for 1 second until we do get a couple of inputs here. All right, here we go. They're starting to come in. Can you all see my screen? That's it.
Yes. So we see program development, support for families, resources for individuals. Again, it does work, but it'll take them as separate responses if there's spaces. If you put like a quick dash between, it'll help them stick together. So a lot of people interested in resources for individuals and families, developing their programs more. Other thoughts and pieces. Again, you can copy the link in the chat, or you can text STEP DDS1 to 22333. That's also in the chat. Ooh, staff development, supportive housing, staffing. Yeah, that's a big one. Christine will be talking to us some more about that today for sure.
And remember that one of the big buckets is to support transitions, but also if your agency is considering investing outside of STEP into other program priorities, feel free to include those as well.
Absolutely. Yes. What we walked through are just some examples. As long as the investment aligns with overarching DDS funding guidelines, it is an eligible use of the funds. So we're seeing some really great pieces coming up on here. And hopefully as you're seeing some of these ideas come up, it's resonating with you, maybe giving you some new ideas or some additional ideas. As you all are looking at this word cloud, or as you're thinking about it, we'd like to turn to the group at large and ask you to weigh in a little bit more. How are you planning to use your STEP incentives? You know, for example, if you said you are looking to add in some more positions or do some community development, we'd love to hear some more color, some more context. So please feel free to come off mute and share some more about your current thinking.
Hi, this is Gail at Favar.
Okay.
I'm not able to download that either way. So I'm just gonna share how Favar plans to use this program. We are looking at transitioning individuals from GSE into SEI. We haven't started yet, other than we have the application is completed, and we have identified. I met with Tammy Annis from Favar, who was also in on this webinar as well, to identify individuals that we think would be good candidates to try to move from GSE into SEI. I do have a question, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time or place to ask it, but transportation is a big barrier for our individuals with SEI. Are we going to be addressing that today at all?
We can definitely talk about it. We don't have a magical answer, but would love to hear from the group what they maybe been considered or thinking about. We know that it is certainly an obstacle that others have come up against too.
Okay.
I can add something to that. Under IDV, there is transportation in that. So you're looking at SEI, ISE, but under IDV, there's more hours associated with that in that program, and transportation's under that.
Okay, well, that's certainly an option. We don't do a lot of IDV because of staffing. So another question with that, just going forward, is you have transportation vans. Is there a way for us to secure a van through these incentives, to pay for the cost of a van to do that, to provide IDV?
Absolutely. So if your agency is interested in purchasing a van, that is an eligible expense with your incentives. So if you have enough incentive funds, you've identified a vehicle, you can purchase the vehicle and then use it to provide transportation.
Okay, thank you. We'll be wanting to get more information on that, I'm sure.
And that particular example is actually something that was written into an agency's plan who has been approved.
Okay, so we did not have that written into our plan. Would we have to redo our plan and
No,
resubmit?
no.
Or
No, it would still
Okay.
be all right. That's the other interesting thing about the STEP incentives, right? Is agencies are encouraged as they're creating their plan to lay out their expected costs directly related to transitions. But many agencies are finding that the incentives they receive are greater than their anticipated costs. And the difference, those additional incentives, there's a lot of flexibility about how you can invest them, and you do not need to specify it within your plans. Okay.
Okay.
We see another question in the chat. Curious as to what, if any, documentation DDS will require to support / confirm our uses of the STEP money. So this actually really ties into this idea of a lot of flexibility, right? So unlike in, say, like a grant program where often you've laid out, here are our expenses, and then you have to be very careful about the pieces, you earn the incentives through supporting transitions or through completing outcomes like restructuring from sub-minimum wage to not to minimum wage, right? And so your documentation with DDS to receive the incentives is based on your transitions and those pieces that are in your plan, and then that you talk with the region as you're providing your updates and moving through. So in terms of how you're using your STEP money, if you're just using the incentive funds, there is no additional documentation other than kind of your usual run-of-the-mill pieces of how you do things. Now, where you might need additional support and confirmation is there are some providers who, because of the nature of their plans, they're making really big transformations to how their agency provides supports. And because of what they're doing, they are asking for additional one-time payments in addition to the incentives. And in those cases, there would be a need for more confirmation and clarification with DDS on exactly how that funding's being received and spent. But if it's just the step incentives that you have received because of the transitions, you don't need additional documentation.
So this is Stephanie. I'm the one that asked the question. Thank you. If I can dive a little bit deeper, please. Because we keep track of all kinds of expenses and all kinds of revenues at a very detailed level. And I don't want to be in a situation that after the fact, that's what people are looking for. So can I confirm with you that, you know, you all will not need to see invoices and documentation and proof of the expenditure? Clearly, we're gonna use the money the way it's intended. I like my job. I want to stay here. But the question is, how much documentation do you all need from us? And I think I heard not really. You're not going to need that kind of documentation. Is that a correct statement?
That's a correct statement. You can think of the funding you receive through STEP incentives the same as like funding you receive for delivering services. You have received it for completing something, and after that, it is yours to reinvest to use appropriately within your agency.
All right, thanks so much.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, folks. This is great. We can take questions throughout, and then we're also interested to hear from others. Are there others interested or willing to share about how they're planning to use their STEP incentives?
Well, I know for my agency, Opportunity Works, we've always had the missing link of not having a job developer or a community liaison. So those are two critical areas that we need to hire for, and I'm glad to say that we just hired both of those positions. And that's going to be, you know, those folks will be the bridge between OWC and the community. And we look forward to next steps and working with our new staff.
That's really exciting. Congratulations on filling those positions. Others interested in sharing?
I can share a little bit about some ways that UCP has utilized some of the funding that we've gotten through our staff incentives, if you'd like.
Sure, would love to.
So we have an approved plan for supporting people to move out of a day program into a transition program. And then we also, we were approved for that initially, and then we added to our plan in the last 6 months or so to support someone moving out of a GSH to IDV and someone from a DSH to ISE. So we've got kind of a combination there, but primarily for our folks who are in now a transition program, moving out of a day program, we've found that we really needed enhanced staff supports for those individuals. They were, you know, we had identified them when we submitted our plan that they might be good candidates, and they and their teams agreed, but they do have, you know, a significantly higher level of support than perhaps the traditional candidate for a transition program. But we felt like it really matched with our mission to help support these individuals to be more competitive, you know, to be competitively employed, to be out in their community. So one of the ways that we've been able to utilize this funding is enhanced staffing in that program. So we've got really exceptional staff to individual ratios there, which has been really critical in terms of helping the individuals participate in that program, both with delivering curriculum and also with supporting them at their community internship sites. So that's been really beneficial. I will say the flip side of that has been finding the staff has been challenging. So Chris, the fact that you hired those two people is really, that's really great.
It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But we still have more to hire, believe me.
Yeah, same. And we were able to actually hire for those positions in transition, but we did have some vacancies for a little while. So we had to kind of move people around from other programs that were, for, believe it or not, better staffed. They were really actually well staffed. So we were able to make some temporary adjustments, and, you know, the managers all pitch in, supervisors, but the enhanced staffing has been really the only reason that we're able to support those folks in transition at this point. So that's been really helpful. And then AT, we've also got 2 people who are going to go through an AT class to be able to deliver assistive technology to those individuals in our transition program and also to the individuals who are transitioning from the DSH and the GSH into employment. So utilizing that. And you reminded me, Betsy, too, we actually have 2 people who have gone through the customized employment curriculum to also help kind of make our employment services more robust. So those have been some good ways to utilize that funding, I think, through our STEP program.
Well, and as a reminder to folks on the call too, if you have staff go through that customized employment curriculum, DDS has made additional funding available for incentives for that. And you don't even need to have a STEP plan to receive those incentives. So that helps too.
Same with the AT training as well. That's part of it, which is really separate from the STEP program, which is really nice.
So even if your plan is under review, or if you've already submitted a plan and it didn't include those pieces, no need to update. You can still take advantage of those training opportunities. So we've heard a big focus from folks on the call around staffing, both hiring or using additional staff hours. Do others on the call feel like that would be, is that likely where you're going to lean your incentives in? You know, we've seen some folks talking about different resources for individuals and families, though we know that often that comes down to staff time as well. I'm interested to hear reactions from folks or additional thoughts.
Well, we haven't got started yet. We've submitted, I believe we've been approved, but I'm not 100% sure of that. We are planning on doing some of the training, some of the money for training, like training manual for both staff and the individuals moving from the group home to the community, so that they have like a reference book when something arises, that they can't just ask staff, they could look it up and it would be right there. And it'll be both like pictorial and written. So that so that each individual will be able to understand what it is. So like if, the toilet overflows, what's the first step you should do, type of thing, and things like that, that in a group home they don't have to worry about, but in their own apartment they need to worry about.
A cool resource and something that you can keep using even beyond the STEP period, right? When the incentives are gone, you still have the manuals.
Right.
So as folks, and especially, those who have already started thinking about some of your transitions, what have some of the difficulties been? Christine, you mentioned a little bit like challenges in terms of getting staffing. Are there other roadblocks you'd like to share?
Yeah, educating the community with the future of, having our folks on their payroll is a huge challenge. To build a relationship with each business is a huge challenge. It doesn't happen overnight. So my question is, what is, on a larger level, what is the state of Connecticut or the governor even? Are they informing businesses in Connecticut that, hey, this is a big initiative that we want to help our folks be employed in the community. They live in their community, they socialize in their community, they should be able to be employed in their community. So it's a really large conversation. In each agency, we do the best we can, but it's like pebbles in a big pond.
Yeah.
We're just making little ripples. But I think we need to have a larger conversation. Can you tell me if that conversation is happening?
Yes. So DDS has their own STEP plan, right? So providers are creating their transition plans, their transformation plans, and DDS also has a STEP plan you can find. Well, you used to be able to find it on the DDS website. Since they redid things, it's a little challenging, but we'll drop the link. But they are working and moving towards creating an employer database. So where case managers will work with employers for folks who have employed people who receive supports, so that there's this greater understanding, and then be able to use more of that to help build more of this understanding. They're also looking into, can they strengthen some of their partnerships with the Connecticut Department of Labor, who does more of these conversations with employers, as well as strengthening their partnerships with the Bureau of Rehabilitative Services, right? So coming together as a group for how do they, like you said, like making sure employers understand some of the benefits, not just in hiring some really great employees, but there can also be some tax benefits and pieces as well, depending on the program and the emphasis. So that is in motion. We do know there's also some providers who are building some committees to build relationships with businesses. And I'm not going to name names, but there are folks on the call who are with those agencies, and if they would like to speak up. But we also recognize that people are different roles within their agencies. So that's why I don't want to call anyone out. But if anyone would like to come out off mute and share some of what their agency is doing in terms of building some of those relationships and helping employers to understand the benefits of hiring people who receive supports. Okay. Might have stepped away as well. But no, so some agencies are doing things like creating committees that bring employers together even to talk to each other about their experiences. And then they're able to invite additional employers in who can then hear about it and learn about it, right? Because your job developer can go out and talk to your community liaison, can talk to businesses all they want, but when you bring people into like a business development council and employers can talk to each other, it's that sort of additional level of like, oh, well, they have a similar company to mine. And so I can definitely trust them because they had a great experience.
Yeah, I can go into another challenge. The families and residences, it's a big challenge because a lot of the folks that we support, their families are happy with Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 2:30, which is great. Because once our folks get jobs in the community, most likely they're going to be entry level, and that could be evenings and weekends and holidays. So it's gonna, it takes the whole team. The family has to really buy in on it, and some families are really great and they're progressive, but other families are like, no, we like it how it is. So that could be a huge challenge. So for employment in my world, we identified 25 individuals, and we're meeting with all teams. I just have 6 more meetings to complete, but I only have 9 yeses so far. And I was hoping that, the families and a lot of times the individuals want to, but let's be honest, the guardians supersede what the individuals want. I mean, that's the truth. So that's another challenge.
I would agree with that. Actually, I wanted to mention that that was something that we had kind of been mentioning, and I think the ARPA committee meetings too, is that it's great to take someone who's in like a 30-hour a week Monday through Friday program, and realizing that they're part of the reason why they're receiving those kinds of supports is because whatever living arrangement they're in requires that, whether it's a family home who really needs that kind of support, or CLAs, group homes. That's I don't really see a way to solve that problem for the folks that we have in our transition program, who the goal is employment, competitive community-based employment. So, and like you said, Chris, it's going to be evenings, weekends. It's not going to be 30 hours a week, Monday through Friday. So that's that's a barrier, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of that if they need those once they're employed and they need those supports that don't align with the existing residential structure. And I think that there's a need that DDS has to kind of look at braiding services, or providing maybe more lawn level hours for people. That's going to be a barrier, and I'm really curious if someone else has figured that out, because that's something that we talk about a lot and we don't have the answer to.
So I would agree with both comments that were just made. I actually, within my transition department that I'm working with Gail Nebel on for FAVAR, Project Search is part of that. So we're also trying to move people from that into independent employment. And even in that arena where we've been talking for an entire year about what hourly rate entry-level jobs look like, and the possibility of it not being Monday through Friday from 9 to 3 in our case.
Yep.
And the transportation piece being thrown in there. There's a lot of stumbling blocks that we have to get families, guardians, group home managers, whoever might be part of the team to kind of overcome. In Gail's situation, and Gail, I'm going to speak on your behalf a little bit, the biggest pushback that she's receiving from a lot of the people that we've spoken with is the fact that they're going from a very routine schedule that our folks tend to need and flourish having, to a very unknown schedule week to week. And it's also the loss of the socialization that happens in group support employment. And we struggle a little bit to teach people that, although everybody that we work with is our friends, they're our work friends. We all receive our socialization outside of that. And we're struggling with that a little bit. And we've been talking about this long before, the STEP program was an option. It's always a barrier. It's always, when am I going to see my friends, if we're not providing that within their day or employment program, because families or group homes may not be. So I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
Problem we need to overcome.
It's a little more challenging for group homes too, because they have funding that they need to, stay under the cap and everything, and a lot of our folks can't be home for more than maybe 2 hours a day. So if they're not working 30 hours a week, huge challenge for group homes. But I think, if the teams come together and they work well together, there's solutions, and we all can be creative. As far as like where do folks go when they're not working, they would be home, but there may be more monies in the budget to maybe do like a self-hire for people that live with mom and dad, or in a community training house. There may be monies that they can self-hire so they can still have that social aspect, maybe volunteering in their community and things like that. I'm just not sure how much extra monies would be there.
Right. And again, all of those kinds of things, while great ideas, cost money. So it's about where to get those dollars in order to make that happen for them. So.
And I think adding like assistive technology to helping people be more independent, like in the home, we've also been looking at people's lawns and seeing like Chris, you mentioned how long someone can be home alone for, really kind of working with the individual and the team to see if it can be expanded, if that amount of time someone can be home alone can be expanded, if there's assistive technology they can use to keep them safe, to expand that amount of time someone can be independent. But that's still a work in progress, and we haven't been able to solve the problem with that. But I think that's one way to do it. I think there's more to it than that, but I do think that there's some opportunity with some AT for some people, depending on the person. So.
Great discussion. What other routes are people using to try to solve this, or even ideas you think that if there was more money or more support kind of from the state level, that might be helpful?
One of the things that we are looking at with identifying our individuals, FAVAR has a large IHS program. And so the transportation issue can be solved in that way because they have staff support hours. Although sometimes what happens if they don't have a lot of staff support hours and they're spending a lot of time taking them back and forth to work, so I don't know if there would be an opportunity for additional funding in that way through the incentives. But that's one way to kind of address the transportation issue. But as Tammy had shared, the social piece is huge. We have had individuals that were in SEI and they did well and they were there for years, but they were so lonely because they did not have that social piece. So I actually have a couple of them that have gone back into GSE, so the social piece is big. We're kind of trying to tackle it from an IHS point of view, but then, that's limiting. That's not open to our group home people because it would be very difficult, for the group homes to be able to accommodate that as well. Would there be through the incentives where we could possibly ask for more IHS hours so that all their support hours are not being transported back and forth to work in the IHS program?
You can use incentive dollars to provide additional staffing. The only issue becomes the incentives are not limitless and they're not for forever, right? So even though there is significant funding for somebody moving from a congregate to a non-congregate employment setting or from non-employment to employment, it can run out fast. And I know, Christine, the sustainability was something that you were interested in talking about. If you want to chime in there from your experience or your planning.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely something that is a concern for us. Like the funding is all fantastic right now, and it's allowing us to really do a lot of unique things, but it's all one-time dollars. So again, that enhanced staffing that we have in the program that the individuals need, and then what's going to happen when they transition to a less supportive program, you know, where's that staffing supports? And we're trying to get people to be as independent as they can with AT, with travel training, but the reality is that the guys are going to need continue to support. So the sustainability of that funding is definitely something that we don't have an answer for, and is a concern. You know, we did kind of dive into this because we thought it was a great opportunity and it met with our mission, but you know, the long-term funding is a challenge. So lost my train of thought. I was going to say one more thing and I forgot. Sorry, lost it.
Okay.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the funding runs out in June of 25.
So you have to earn the incentive by March of 2025. So that means somebody has transitioned and successfully been in the new support for 60 days to count as a successful transition and receive the incentives. And then once you receive the funding, then you don't have to, the agency does not have to spend the funding by a certain point in time. DDS has to spend it by a certain point in time. But then there isn't additional funding coming down the pike, right? So you've got providers who are really excited that, you know, many of you have been doing these kinds of transitions, supporting people to be in the least restrictive setting of their choice for years. And so the question kind of becomes, yes, you have the funding to support that transition. And then once someone has transitioned, looking to how do you set them up for success within the existing rate structure long-term.
Yeah, that's definitely. Oh, I was agreeing. I was thinking that's the challenge.
I have a question, Betsy. I want to know if I heard you right. You said that the earned incentives have to be earned by March 25th, but the definition of that means that the individual has been 6 months in their new setting?
No, sorry, 60 days.
60 days, okay.
So realistically, you want to make sure that people are transitioning by, you know, January of next year.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Although we did, the case managers have monthly office hours. And in the last office hour, we heard somebody share a success story of someone that they support who her goal was to transition before Christmas so she could decorate her new apartment for Christmas. So that was a nice story to hear. So why not January? Why not get them in before the end of the year? And then of course the employment is a different ballgame as well. So, but it's the 60 days and it's 60 calendar days. So it's not 60 business days. It's not 60 days of receiving employment supports. It's 60 calendar days. Since we understand, of course, that, you know, people don't immediately start working 5 days a week.
I think what you're saying, Betsy, also reminds me of another challenge is the nuances of the plan, like all of those like 60 days and then the different kinds of funding. Some of it's one-time funding, some of it's through WebRes Day, some of it's you've got to really work closely with your contract manager to make sure that you're getting all the incentives you're supposed to be getting and that it's the right incentive. And our resource managers have been great. They're, we're working, I guess they're kind of figuring stuff out too as they're going. They're like, bear with us, this hasn't happened yet, so we're trying to figure it out. So it's new for everybody, but there is a lot of, at least for us, administrative, additional administrative work to track the funding and to, make sure we're getting what we're supposed to get and, taking care of all of that. So it can be confusing. Contracts have had the same questions that we have, and, they have to run it up the chain to kind of figure it out. So it's a work in progress.
Such an important point, Christine.
Yeah, but they've been great. I mean, everyone's willing to figure it out. It's just, there aren't a lot of already known answers.
Like Stephanie's question early on, like, how do we have to track this? And the additional piece in there was the question of like, is that going to change? Because I mean, I know if you've been listening to the STEP updates, there have been changes, right? There was the shift to a newly approved Appendix K where there were additional incentives. There was the move to where plans can now be eligible even if there are no transitions in them, if they're focused on restructuring only. There's been some additional moves and shakes along the way. And echoing Christine, the best way to navigate that is working really closely with your resource managers with the regions. The resource administrators in each region are very deeply engaged. They are meeting regularly with central office as well and with each other to stay coordinated to try to promote consistency across the regions. And that effort of really coming together as a team and seeing the people in the region as part of your team we've heard from folks that that's been really helpful. I see that Do dropped something in the chat that they at Mark, they were helping individuals increase their GSH days or move from full-time day support by using a vocational development program. So it was a blended program with a 3-to-2 day ratio towards one program. So it helped their staffing pattern and their day vocational structure, and also supported some of the socialization to help people get together. Yeah, that's a really great program, and thank you for sharing about that for sure. So as we are getting more towards the end, any other questions or pieces folks wanted to share on the topic of using your STEP incentives? Okay. And so then along the lines further of, do folks have any STEP related questions in general? Whether you are in the process and you're coming up against some roadblocks that you want to discuss, or maybe like, not to call you out, but like Lisa, you're earlier in the process and you're actually, no, I think you said you had submitted, but we know we have some folks on the line who are just getting started. And even if you want to sort of share with the group some of your initial thinking, and we can talk through how it may or may not fit in with STEP and where your incentives might fit in. All right. Well,
I have one quick question. So I have many questions that I'm not gonna be able to apply to right now. Who is the actual contact person at the STEP program that if we have questions, we should be reaching out to, or is there a whole host of people?
There's two main places to reach out. So if you're looking for Deloitte support and technical assistance, we have an email address and we'll put that in the chat. And then if you have something that is more for DDS, your resource manager or resource administrator is going to be the best bet.
Okay, thank you.
And so you can always contact us at it's DDS step support. at
Yeah,
Deloitte.com?
I'm trying to paste it in right now.
Oh, okay. DDS step support at Deloitte.com. And feel free to reach out to us anytime. And that way you can reach both Owen or I. So if one of us is out of office, we can still get the messages. Okay. Well, thank you all. This has been a great session. I hope that it was useful to listen in or to chime in, depending on what you chose to do today. And we actually have a poll. We have some more sessions coming up, but we want to make sure that they're meeting your needs and interests. So Owen, I'll turn it to you.
Yes, I just launched this poll. So looking ahead, we're planning to do more technical assistance sessions that are structured in this way, where we sort of have potentially some guests on to talk about their experience, and then also to have a group discussion where you all can hear from each other and gather best practices and that sort of thing. So you'll see here we've got several example sessions listed, and we'd love to know what you all are thinking in terms of which of these is interesting, which you would like to see a full session on. And then we will work with DDS to schedule something that the group is interested in.
Got some front runners. Don't miss your chance to vote. And we always welcome, feedback or input. Again, you can reach us at the email address in the chat. It has been such a privilege to be able to work with providers as they are creating their transformation plans and supporting individuals. So please never hesitate to reach out. And then we can also help connect you in with DDS as needed. Oh, we were going to put the link to the step plan in too. We might have to send that one out afterwards, but we do have people's connections. But Chris will get you the step plan that's got some of the information about what they're doing in terms of connecting with employers at a broader level. And certainly there are DDS activities that will influence some of these challenges that are not part of the step plan. Things like they have a transportation, thank you, Chris. They have a transportation committee that's working on some of the ins and outs of how can they improve transportation access. And then of course they have ongoing workforce efforts to try to support better opportunities for staffing in the state. And actually just recently, I guess it's been a few months now, but hired a new workforce director. So we just make sure, there we go. There's the step plan at that link. But any closing thoughts or questions as we wrap up? It looks like we'll be having a session about all things restructuring coming up soon. But there's a lot of interest in a lot of the topics. So we look forward to future sessions. Thank you to all of you, and especially to our guest speakers today. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We always like to hang just in case somebody has stayed on because they wanted to ask the final question. We will stop the recording.